Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another Noodle film review. Tonight we're looking at a classic, American sort of folk horror made in the sort of early 70s, starring John Boyd and Burt Reynolds. We're looking at Deliverance. Now this is a classic sort of folk horror film. I class it as a folk horror film because it has all the elements of a folk horror. It has like a rural area. It has like locals, like in this case, like hillbillies that don't know city folk, and they've got the city folk coming into their territory. And this is about these four guys from the city coming into this river to canoe down it. And because the river's going to be sort of like, I think, going sort of drained out by like big corporations and stuff like that. And the area they've gone to is full of local sort of like hillbilly families that are sort of like really remote and away from civilization as such. And the first group of hillbillies they meet they're okay. They're sort of like a not, they're helping them, but they're not really that helpful. You know, they're sort of like don't want them to be there. It's so obvious. And you got the classic moment of the guitar and the banjo, the dueling banjos, with the classic sort of song there when one of the young hillbilly lads starts playing with the other guy on the guitar, and the hillbilly guy's got the banjo, and you've got that classic sort of scene when there's that sort of coming togetherness sort of thing almost, and like the old boy starts dancing around and stuff like that, and they all seem to be quite enjoying and sort of getting on okay. And Burt Reynolds talks to the old boy because he wants a couple of them to drive their cars to the end of the river, so they can, when they canoe down, they got their cars there. And he says, well, none of us can do it, you need to speak to these other sort of hillbillies that are a bit further down. So he goes and speaks to them, and once again they're quite reluctant. They don't want these sort of people to be here, because they look at them as an invasion on their sort of like, you know, their own little world, because they're so remote and cut off from everything. They've got their own sort of community and world, and so that's the way they live, and that's the way they are. This is like in the sort of probably deep south of America, United States, not South America, but in the sort of like probably right down in the sort of Louisiana sort of area, I would have thought. But eventually these two hillbillies agree to take their cars for them, and then they start off on their sort of road trip down towards the river. They get a bit lost because Burt Reynolds, who's like the leader of the guys, well, I think he's the leader, doesn't really know where he's going and gets sort of lost quite a bit. But eventually they find themselves to the river, and they go on to the river in their canoes, and they start canoeing themselves down the river. And we see this beautiful like area of the river, like quite untouched. And so they're off, and the hillbillies take their cars off for them. So they go off on their trip. Are they going to make it to the end of the river? Is the river too dangerous for them? They come across other hillbillies further down in the river. Now these ones are even more remote, and they don't like anybody in their sort of area, and they will kill to protect their area. So although these four guys not there to harm them or do anything to their area, they're still crossing their land, their area where they've always lived, and they don't like anybody in there. And they succumb to some very horrible things happen to these four city guys, especially one of them. It's really quite a horrible, disturbing part of the film, because when the film sort of starts off, you kind of think this is a yeah, it's okay, it's like a road trip sort of film. Yeah, and they're going to come across some sort of hillbilly things, you know. And you think it's going to be a bit like that Southern Comfort film, but it's not. It's it it's more like I Spit on Your Grave than Southern Comfort. And the film then turns into sort of like a bit of a revenge movie um, halfway through the film, as these guys are being terrorized by these remote hillbillies, and they're trying to get their own back on these hillbillies for what they've done to one of their friends. And so it really sort of yeah, it turns into quite a disturbing movie. And for this sort of like time period when this film was made, I can't remember what year was it. It's probably 72 or maybe even earlier, 71 or 73. But that it's a really sort of like still quite disturbing today when you get to sort of like that part of the movie. And and the film sort of progresses down that way, and it turns into a sort of fight of survival. And do they make it? Well, you need to watch it and find out, because that's all the sort of plot and storyline I'm going to tell you. What do I think of Deliverance? It's an amazing film. It's such a cool classic movie. It really, really is. It's one of those really early exploitation sort of films that sort of like kicked off those sort of revengey sort of films like Last House on the Left and Spit on Your Grave and all these sort of things. It's along those sort of lines of films, but with a more sort of male survival adventure feel to it. The pluses of it, it's a quite a good transfer. It looks really neat. It's just a normal Warner Brother Blu-ray, but they've done quite good on the transfer. It could probably do quite well with a 4K upgrade. I wouldn't personally myself buy it because I'm quite happy with the one I've got, but I think it could benefit from a 4K upgrade, because it's that type of, when you look at it, it looks nice and you think, oh, if this was 4K, it would look really sharp. But it still looks really cool and sharp now, as you can see maybe some of the clips. It's excellent cast. John Voight, Ned Beatty, Burt Reynolds, and a really good cast. And the hillbillies are quite convincing. It's the story's a little bit on the weak side in a sense, you know, but it's very like, you know, like a Wrong Turn, that sort of storyline, where these guys going the wrong way and they come across a group of like hillbillies. This is the same sort of storyline. Or the other way around, the Wrong Turn has taken its stuff from the Deliverance, but it's that kind of film. It is quite disturbing and violent in places. There's a little bit of gore. Negatives, no, I can't really think of any. I really enjoyed the film. It's a really cool film. So I'm going to score Deliverance as an amazing film and give it a 9 out of 10. It's not a 10 out of 10 movie to me, but it's very close. It is a classic sort of horror movie to me. I class it as a horror movie because it's horrible things that happen, and it's that sort of premise of like guys on the river and there's hillbillies sort of like terrorizing them. So yeah, it's a horror film. I class it as a folk horror, just because like it's in a rural area with people that don't like intruders, and you've got intruders coming in and they don't know their ways. And so I look at it as like a sort of folk horror film, but an American sort of folk horror, which there isn't many. I will be doing some folk horror on my channel coming up in October. I want to be doing a folk horror top 10, because I haven't done that yet, and it is my favourite genre, because obviously within folk horror is witchcraft. So it's in my favourite genre. So I will be looking at that during October. Deliverance, 9 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you thought of it. I mean, it is a classic film. It's a great cast. And it can be a bit of a difficult watch if you don't like sort of revenge sort of films and seeing people being sort of abused. It can be quite a hard watch, but it's of its time, and it must have been absolutely shocking when if you went to see this in a cinema, you think you're going to see a film with John Voight and Burt Reynolds, because John Voight was a huge actor. Around him. Burt Reynolds was sort of really finding his feet still when this film came out, but John Voight was a really popular actor. He'd been in quite a few films in the 70s and stuff. And Ned Beatty, of course, he's a legendary actor, which quite people think. And so they probably went to the cinema thinking you're going to see this amazing cast on this sort of venture film, and it turns out to be like this sort of hillbilly revenge horror film. But there you go. Great film. Guys, check out some horror channels before my next video. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Fizzle, I'm the Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, and Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House. And massive shout out to my lad Lemon Lord, of course, as I always like to try and give him a shout out now. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I'll see you all soon.